The street lights were on before the sun fully disappeared. Every house had that warm yellow glow through the windows, except mine. I stood there a second longer than I needed to, key still in my hand, duffel bag cutting into my shoulder. Long flight, longer drive, quiet neighborhood I'd memorized before deployment. Nothing looked broken. Nothing looked wrong. The porch light didn't turn on when I stepped forward. I tried the key anyway. The lock opened, but the house didn't respond. No hum from the refrigerator. No air from the vents. No ticking thermostat. Just a still kind of silence you only notice when you expect sound. I waited. Sometimes systems take a second. They didn't. My phone flashlight swept across the entryway and landed on a paper taped to the inside of the door, orange, official looking, placed straight, too straight to be random. Utility access restricted, HOA compliance action. I read it once fast. Then again slower. The date wasn't recent. It was months old. For a second I thought breaker box. Storm. Billing error. Then I noticed the security panel wires tucked neatly behind the wall plate, not cut, disconnected. I stepped back onto the porch and looked down the street again. Lights everywhere. Mine was the only house dark. And across the road, my neighbor was watching me. Then pretending he hadn't been. Before I explain why the power was cut, you need to see what they were building this toward. Because the electricity coming back on wasn't the real problem. If you follow real stories like this, hit like and subscribe. The timeline matters more than the argument. When I left for deployment, the house looked exactly the way I like things. Driveway clean. Grass trimmed. Trash cans lined up straight along the curb. Nothing dramatic. Nothing unusual. The HOA president actually stopped by the morning I was loading my bags. He smiled, asked how long I'd be gone, thanked me for my service. Casual conversation. Clipboard in his hand like always. I told him, few months. He nodded, wrote something down. At the time, I thought it was just routine. Emergency contact. Neighborhood record keeping. I didn't think about it again. I gave my sister a spare key. Just for the plants and the mail. I told her not to stress about anything official looking. If it's important, I'll handle it when I get back. Overseas, internet wasn't great. Emails loaded halfway. Subject lines came through though. Courtesy reminder. Second notice. Final courtesy. I remember staring at one of them on a slow night and thinking, I'll deal with it later. It's probably landscaping. I didn't open them. My sister mentioned once that someone had been taking pictures of the house. Said it felt excessive. I told her that's just what HOAs do. One day she texted me a picture of a certified mail slip. Pink paper stuck to the door. I told her not to sign for it. I figured if I didn't acknowledge it, nothing could escalate. That's what I believed. The last thing she said before I flew home was strange though. Your mailbox hasn't had anything in it for weeks. I thought it was a forwarding glitch. I didn't know by then, the mailbox wasn't the only thing that had quietly changed. The next morning, the house was still quiet. No outlets working. No water heater. Even the garage keypad stayed dead after a full night. I stood in the kitchen a minute longer than necessary, like the power might come back if I didn't move too much. It didn't. Around mid-morning, a white utility truck rolled up slowly and stopped in front of my driveway. Not the city company, different logo. Smaller lettering. Temporary plates zip-tied on. 2 workers stepped out already carrying tools. They weren't looking at the lines on the pole. They were walking straight toward my meter. I met them outside before they reached the wall. They had paperwork ready before I even spoke. My name was printed on it. One of them said, calm and rehearsed. Just here to secure the access box. Secure it. I asked what that meant. He didn't answer directly. Just pointed to a section labeled Association Authorization. For a second, I thought maybe the utility company had sent them because I'd been gone. Safety thing. Vacancy precaution. So I called the number on my bill while they waited. The representative asked for my address, then paused longer than normal. You can hear pauses over the phone. She said the account wasn't inactive, but it also wasn't under my control right now. I asked what that meant. Another pause. Then she read carefully, like she was choosing words. The service status is currently listed as community managed access. I repeated it back to her, slower. Community managed. Behind me I heard the click of metal. They'd already installed a locked cover over my meter. I hadn't agreed to anything yet. The workers packed up without arguing. Like the conversation didn't matter. And for the first time since I got home, it didn't feel like a billing issue anymore. By the afternoon, small things started acting different. My package delivery notification said undeliverable, access restricted. I was standing 10 feet from the front door when I read it. The driver never even slowed down. I checked the mailbox next. There was a small steel latch on it now. Not a lock I installed, one bolted through the side. My key still fit, but it wouldn't turn fully. Like the inside mechanism had been changed. I stared at it longer than I should have, trying to remember if maybe I'd just forgotten what it looked like before deployment. You start second-guessing normal details when nothing makes sense. So I logged into the HOA portal. Or tried to. My password didn't work. Reset link said property not associated with account. I refreshed twice thinking it was a loading error. Then I searched my own address in the community directory. My name wasn't there. For a second I honestly thought I typed it wrong. I didn't. Across the street, my neighbor walked over slow, the same one from last night. He didn't come onto the driveway, just stood near the curb and handed me a folded paper like he didn't want anyone seeing. It was a printed photo of meeting minutes from months ago. Half the page normal budget notes. Then one line circled in pen. Vacant property, enforcement escalation approved. The date was during my second month overseas. I read it again. And again. I wasn't surprised they fined me. I was surprised they'd already decided something about the house while I was still living in it, just somewhere else. I folded the paper and didn't go to the HOA office. Not yet. Instead, I grabbed a notebook and started writing down times, names, trucks, everything. Because arguing suddenly felt less useful than understanding. And whatever this was, had started long before I landed. That night I stayed in the house anyway. No power, no hot water, just a quiet and a flashlight on the counter. I told myself it was temporary. Easier to believe that than figure out where else to go after being gone that long. I ate takeout straight from the container. Cold by the time I opened it. Didn't even bother sitting at the table. Part of me kept saying this could still be simple. Maybe I missed a payment. Maybe I ignored too many notices. Maybe I made it worse by not signing that certified letter. I opened the HOA website again on my phone, stared at the fee payment page someone sent me earlier. I could probably just pay it. Start over tomorrow. For a full minute I hovered over the confirm button. Then I stopped. Because I didn't actually know what I'd be admitting to. I called my sister but kept my voice normal. Told her everything was fine, just a paperwork mess. She offered to come over. I said no too quickly. After I hung up, the silence felt louder than before. I kept thinking about the meeting minutes line, vacant property. The house wasn't vacant. I wasn't late. I was deployed. And the strange part wasn't the fines anymore. It was how organized everything seemed. Not messy. Not accidental. Planned. I didn't feel angry yet. Just unsure whether I'd misunderstood something. Or finally understood it. 2 days later a notice appeared on the community board at the entrance. Compliance inspection, affected property review. My address. Date and time included. They didn't mail it. They posted it where everyone would see. When I walked outside that morning, people were already slowing their cars down passing my driveway. Not stopping, just looking longer than normal. By the time the HOA board arrived, half the sidewalk had turned into an audience pretending not to be one. Folding table. Clipboards. Phone cameras held low. The president stood at the edge of my lawn like it wasn't mine anymore, just a location. He started reading from a printed sheet. Unmaintained occupancy status. Failure to respond to notices. Utility noncompliance. The words sounded official enough that nobody questioned them. For a second, I almost didn't either. I waited until he finished before saying anything. I only asked one question. Who authorized control of the utilities? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, a man I hadn't seen before stepped forward, suit, no neighborhood badge. Introduced himself as part of a development consulting group assisting the association. Consulting. He explained improvements, infrastructure alignment, long-term planning. All vague enough to sound reasonable, specific enough to avoid details. People around us nodded like they understood. I didn't. So I asked again. Who authorized control of the utilities on my property? This time the president said records were available at the office during business hours. Not here. A county patrol car rolled slowly past and stopped at the curb. The officer stepped out but didn't intervene, just observed. Like this wasn't a dispute yet, just a conversation with paperwork nearby. The consultant kept talking about compliance timelines. I noticed he never used the word owner. Only property. I held up the meeting minutes paper my neighbor gave me. Asked why my house was discussed while I was overseas. The president corrected me. Property classified as non-active occupancy. Not vacant. Not abandoned. A different phrase. One I'd never heard before. The crowd shifted, not against me, not for them. Just uncertain. Small moment, but important. I asked for the document that allowed reclassification. They said I could request it formally. I asked if they had it with them. They didn't. For the first time, a few phones raised higher. The consultant changed tone slightly. More careful now. He mentioned future access needs for shared utility routing. Said cooperation would resolve things faster. That word, routing, didn't match fines or grass height or mailbox rules. It sounded like planning around something permanent. I didn't argue. I didn't accuse. I just said I'd wait to review everything before responding. Which seemed to frustrate them more than if I'd yelled. Because they couldn't escalate a reaction I didn't give. As they packed up, I noticed orange paint marks near the edge of my yard I hadn't seen before. Faint, half-washed by rain. Survey marks. Not inspection marks. Different spacing. Different purpose. The consultant saw me looking and stepped between me and the curb, casual, but intentional. That was the first moment I understood this wasn't about rules. But I still didn't know what it was about yet. After everyone left, the officer lingered a second. Didn't take sides. Just asked quietly, "You been gone a while?" I nodded. He looked back toward the painted curb, then back at me, like he wanted to say more but chose not to. Then he left too. The street returned to normal, kids riding bikes, garage doors opening, life continuing. Except now neighbors didn't pretend not to watch. They watched carefully. Like they were waiting to see who actually controlled the house. And for the first time, I realized the meeting wasn't meant to fix a violation. It was meant to confirm something in public. I just didn't know what they thought they'd already confirmed. Late that afternoon, a different truck pulled up. Not the HOA pickup. Not the same utility crew from before. City utility logo this time. The driver didn't come to the door, he walked straight to the meter like he expected to be there. I followed him outside. He checked the line, then the locked cover, then looked back at me. "Power isn't shut off," he said. I thought I misheard him. The house had been dark for days. He explained the service was still active, electricity was flowing to the line. Nothing disconnected at the pole. Only the access to the meter had been restricted. I asked what that actually meant. He hesitated before answering. It means the account holder can't legally use it, but it's still live. For a second that didn't make sense. Then it did. They didn't cut the power. They made it unusable. Different problem entirely. Before leaving, he pointed at the curb, at those faded paint lines I noticed earlier. Those aren't inspection marks, he said. They're path marks. Path for what, he didn't say. But he didn't need to. I walked the line with my eyes and realized it didn't stop at the street. It crossed the corner of my yard. Straight toward the houses behind me. All this time I thought the issue was fines. Or compliance. But the power being blocked wasn't punishment. It was preparation. That night I didn't call the HOA. I called base legal. Not because I thought they'd fix it, mostly because I wanted to ask if I was misunderstanding the wording they used. Non-active occupancy. It sounded official enough that I figured it meant something I just hadn't heard before. The paralegal on duty asked a few normal questions first. Address. Dates I left. Date I returned. Routine. Then she asked one more. Did any enforcement action happen while you were on active orders? I said yes, but minor stuff, fines, notices, utilities blocked. She didn't answer right away. The silence was longer than the earlier phone pauses with the utility company. Not confusion, calculation. She asked me to send pictures of every notice I had. I texted them over. 5 minutes later my phone rang again. Different voice this time. Older. More careful tone. He didn't start with advice. He asked me not to contact the association again until I heard back. I almost laughed. I hadn't planned to anyway. The next morning, the HOA website changed. My address was still missing from the resident directory, but now the violation history page wouldn't load at all. Error message where the fines used to be. I refreshed twice thinking the site was just broken. By afternoon, the inspection notice from the entrance board was gone too. No announcement. No explanation. Just removed. For a moment I thought maybe they reconsidered. Maybe the public meeting made them back off. That felt reasonable. It wasn't. Around dusk, survey stakes near my curb disappeared. Not dug out, pulled clean. No trucks. No workers. Just gone between one look and the next. Across the street my neighbor noticed too. He walked over halfway like he wanted to ask what I did, then stopped himself and just nodded. I hadn't done anything yet. At least, not directly. Base Legal called again that evening. This time the question changed. Did they restrict utilities before or after they knew you were deployed? I told them the dates from the meeting minutes, months after I left. Another pause. Then, we're documenting timeline involvement. Still no explanation. I asked if I needed a civilian lawyer. He said not yet. Which somehow felt heavier than yes. The following morning the HOA president came to my door for the first time since I returned. Different posture than before. No clipboard. No printed violations. He spoke carefully, said the association may have processed the property under incorrect classification. Used words like review and clarification. Didn't ask me to pay anything. Didn't mention compliance. Just asked if I'd be available later in the week to discuss resolution. 2 days ago they held a public inspection on my lawn. Now they wanted a private conversation. I told him I'd wait. That was all. He nodded like that answer mattered more than agreement. An hour after he left, I received an email from the utility company. Subject line, service access restored pending verification. I hadn't requested restoration. I hadn't signed anything. And the power still wasn't on yet. Meaning someone else initiated it. By the afternoon, neighbors were talking openly instead of quietly. Not rumors, observations. HOA office closed early. Consultant's car not seen since yesterday. Work permits no longer posted online. Small details, but they all pointed the same direction. Something outside the neighborhood had stepped into the situation. I just didn't know who. That evening the porch light flickered once, then stayed dark. Not fixed yet. But the first time since I'd been home, the problem was no longer moving toward me. It was moving away. And I realized the call I made wasn't about solving the power issue. It changed who the problem belonged to. The courtroom was fuller than I expected. Not crowded, just attentive. A few neighbors in the back row. The same consultant from the lawn meeting sitting beside the HOA attorney, suddenly quieter than he had been outside. Papers stacked neatly in front of them like order could control outcome. I took a seat and waited. No one talked much. The judge entered, glanced over the case file, then paused longer than usual before speaking. Not confused, just reading carefully. The HOA attorney started first. He kept it simple. Administrative compliance issue. Automated enforcement procedures. Property classified under community management due to lack of response. Temporary service restrictions. A misunderstanding now being corrected. It sounded reasonable. For a moment, even I wondered if maybe it really had been paperwork spiraling too far. Then the timeline came up. My deployment orders were handed forward. The judge compared the dates silently. The tone of the room changed before anyone said anything. Next came the meeting recording. Audio wasn't loud, but clear enough. Board members discussing my absence. Words like opportunity window and easier access while unoccupied. Someone asked whether notice requirements still applied. Another voice answered, by the time he returns, infrastructure will already be placed. No one looked at me when it played. They looked at the table. The developer emails were shown next. Highlighted lines on a projector. Proposed routing path. Alternative lot clearance avoided due to cost. Preferred route, my property line. Not compliance. Planning. The consultant's posture changed, shoulders tighter now. The HOA attorney shifted strategy. Said utility access restriction was procedural, not removal of service. The judge asked one question. Who controlled the property's functional use during active military service? No one answered immediately. Because the answer mattered more than the wording. My misunderstanding finally became clear to me too. They didn't want fines. They wanted uninterrupted access long enough to install something permanent before I could object. The power wasn't cut to punish me. It was limited to prevent occupancy. The judge leaned back, reviewing the sequence again: classification, restricted access, public inspection, survey markings. Then looked directly at the association table. No raised voice. No dramatic speech. Just a measured ruling statement entered into record. The HOA attorney stopped writing halfway through it. The consultant closed his folder without reading further. And for the first time since I'd been home, nobody looked like they were waiting for my reaction anymore. They were reacting to the decision. Outside the courtroom, reporters asked questions I didn't answer. Not because I couldn't, because the explanation wasn't mine to give. The important part had already happened inside. And it wasn't the penalties or reversals. It was that the argument about rules ended and ownership finally started. By the time I got back home that evening, the porch light was already on. Not flickering this time. Just steady, like it had always been there. The air inside felt normal again. Low hum of the vents. Refrigerator running. Small sounds I hadn't noticed before deployment suddenly felt louder than the silence ever did. Nothing in the house had changed. But the feeling had. Across the street, the same neighbor gave a small nod instead of pretending not to look. No one gathered on the sidewalk anymore. Cars passed without slowing down. Routine came back quietly. I found the original orange notice folded in my jacket pocket, the one I kept rereading the first night home. I stood on the porch a minute, then tore it once and dropped it in the trash. Not dramatic. Not satisfying. Just finished. The situation didn't end with an argument, it ended with the neighborhood acting normal again. And after everything that happened, normal was all I wanted when I came back.